Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. I'm Lex Heron. I'm going to be your facilitator today. And today's service theme is Origin Stories, a Moment of Change. And this is going to be presented to our speaker, who I'd like to welcome. And it is Jamili Omar. And you may remember her. She's been our most frequent storyteller. And she is the Director of Lifespan Faith Development with the UU Church of Tucson and the BAJA 4. New this year, she is also a BAJA 4 ministerial intern, and she will be appearing with us on many different ways over the coming year and a half. In these roles, she loves learning from children, youth, and adults, and especially the lesson that's important, as many of us know, to keep learning. Jamili grew up in Michigan, but considers places with mountains home, so she'd be ideal here. And she currently lives with her family in Tucson. Now, I'd like to welcome all of you who are here and who are on Zoom. This would be a good time, if you haven't done so already, to silence your phone. Which reminds me, maybe I should do it too. A reminder, if you wish to have a particular joy or sorrow read by me, please remember to fill out the form at the back of the church and get it up to me before the service starts, which follows the announcements, which I'm going to be doing here shortly. You can unmute. Just let me get going here. Fill out the form. Or you can put it in the chat if you're in Zoom, or you can unmute and speak up during the joys and sorrows. You'll also find on the back page, if you have any announcements, you've got a chance here before I start to get them up to me, and I will read them out here. Are there any new people here today joining us? Are there any visitors from another church? Okay, I can skip all the rest of this stuff now. Today, you're also invited to have a few refreshments, and today especially, we're going to have something afterwards. There's going to be a discussion here in the sanctuary. So you can come back here and have the discussion, and Jamili will be talking more about that later. The key is you can't bring your food into the sanctuary, so eat quickly. Announcements. The BAJA 4 congregations are sponsoring a concert with UU musician Jim Scott this afternoon, the 16th of April. It'll be at the Mountain Vista UU Church, 3235 West Orange Grove in Tucson. And so this might be something you might want to carpool and arrange for, and this is short notice. The concert will be at 4 p.m., and there is no admission charge. However, baskets will be available for donations. This is a description of the concert, The Year to Save the Earth. It's a multimedia experience by this gentleman, Jim Scott. It's mixing powerful songs and beautiful projected images. The Year to Save the Earth takes us from celebration to grieving, protest, learning, and positive vision for the planet. And so if there's a group going, get together, and you would have time, certainly, after the service today to attend. I'd also like to announce that the Valor Hospice Care invites you to join for a butterfly release in celebration of life. Some of you may have been to it before. I went last year Unfortunately, the butterflies didn't turn up. However, they had bubbles, those little things you can blow bubbles with. And actually, it was quite impressive for the bubbles flying up into the air. But anyway, this year it's open to the public, Saturday, May the 6th at 10 a.m., and it's at the Southern Arizona Veterans Memorial Cemetery on Buffalo Soldier Trail. If you'd like to sponsor live butterflies, they're $2 each, and or have your loved one's name read in their memory with or without purchase of butterflies. And there's a contact phone number here. And I have this, and if you're certainly interested, and it's very, very moving ceremony, and it's great to go to. And you can get some more information from me here. Becky Tanner asks, please RSVP for lunch on April 30th, after the annual meeting. There's a card for Karen Horton's sister Wendy on the table where the birthday cards are out in the community room. If you'd like to please sign that as well. Are there any other announcements that haven't been given to me? Okay. Let us now have a moment to sit quietly and listen to our pianist, Richard Wilder, play our prelude, which is Claire de Lune by Claude Debussy. Debussy.
Thank you, Rich. That was beautiful. And thank you all for having me here today. I'm so excited to start this work, continue the work of the BAJA 4, and move into this internship time. I want to start today with a little poem written by our very own Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, who I serve with up at the UU Church of Tucson. She says, science fiction author Octavia Butler wrote about the tenets of a place called Earthseed. This tenet, the central truth of this place called Earthseed is this: all that you touch, you change. All that you touch changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Imagine a world where this is accepted as truth, not a truth that is hard to swallow sometimes, but a truth to live our lives by. A truth that orients our minds and shapes every action we take. How would your life be different if you met every change as if it were divine? If change came your way and you said, hey God, good to see you. I am blessed by all that I change and all that changes me. Imagine that big, scary change came your way and you greeted it with a hug, with a sigh of relief, not out of a spirit of optimism, but of gratitude. Gratitude for being part of the dynamics of creation, of which we are always changing, we along with it. In this spirit of approaching change with new minds, new hearts, come, let us worship together. In our chalice lighting this morning, I invite us with these words. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deepest questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths.
Would you take a moment now to turn around and wave to our fellow congregants who are on Zoom?
So, this is a once upon a time story, and we lost our little person. Did they leave already? Oh well. Okay, well, you all will have to fill in, because when I tell stories, I always ask the kids to call in response back to me. So this will be your job. Just put on your 5-year-old hat. Play with me, okay? You got this. You got this. I trust the upper right-hand corner. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Rabia, and this was a long, long time ago, and I just love once upon a time stories because sometimes they're true, sometimes they're only true, right? So, once upon a time, Rabia lived in this very small village out in the middle of the desert. Nothing like this. Out in the middle of the desert, and she had a very wonderful community that lived, everybody knew Rabia. So one evening, Rabia's out in her yard, and she's in this dirt road in the middle of her front yard, because it's a desert, it's all dirt. She's digging around in the dirt, and pretty soon somebody comes up to her, and what do they ask her? What are you doing? Why are you digging in the dirt? And she says, oh my gosh, you'll never believe this. I lost a needle, a little sewing needle, right? She was working, little tiny sewing needle, big dirt patch. And so one by one, people say to her, no, they don't say forget it. These are more optimistic. What do they say to her? They say, I will help you, thank you. I knew I could trust this corner, right? They say, I will help you. And so one by one, people of all ages, they're digging in the dirt. How can we help you? Let's look for it. And then somebody, some probably smart aleck, says, well, Rabia, this would really help us to know where you lost the needle. So some time goes by, and she's like, oh, well, you really shouldn't ask that question. And they say, well, why not? Rabia says, well, I lost the needle in my living room. And the community says, why are we looking here? And Rabia says, because the light out here is better. The light in my house isn't as good, and the light out here is better. And one of the wise people, probably a 5-year-old, says to Rabia, well, why are we looking in the place that you didn't lose the needle? And Rabia says to them, well, don't we all do this? We look in the wrong place for the thing that we lost. This is like your religion. Rather than looking outward, we need to look to inside and see what's there. Thank you.
That was a great story. And you know, I was thinking of that Jamili is a bit like the person that comes out and softens up the audience for somebody like me. I should check. Can you hear me in the back? Thank you. This is a moment for stewardship, and we're going to hear from Rich Wilder.
You're going to hear from me. You hear from me all the time when I'm playing the piano. There is a story making the rounds of the Unitarian faith all over the nation. And the story is, it doesn't matter how many members you have, how big your budget is, or how big your building is, or how great the music program is. What matters in a Unitarian church is how many people stick around after this service. You win. You are very, very welcome. Well, first of all, we have good food after the service, and I really appreciate that. I need to put on some weight. If there's cake today, I'll try to have another piece. The other thing that you are is so welcoming. We come in from the shivering cold of Rochester, New York, and we are greeted with such unforgettable warmth. You surround us with your love, and you surround each other with your love. And that is the strength of this congregation. If you walk in the door, you're coming into a place where you will be welcomed and you will be cared for and looked after and held in everybody's hearts. And that is the strength of this particular church. We have come from a great big church, 850 members, and I don't know half of them. So feel very lucky. Please give generously for the program and raise this church up for a wonderful future. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Now it's time for our joys and sorrows. We are a caring congregation and share our joys and sorrows. And by doing this, the sorrows are easier to bear and our joys are magnified when we share them. I'd like you to take a moment and close your eyes and think you're in a pond, a shallow pond with sand around the edge. And think of you picking up a stone and throwing it out into the pond. And as the stone lands in the water, see the ripples that move out from the center out to the sandy shore. You can open your eyes, and that to me is what we do with our joys and sorrows. And we do the same thing. We put a stone in the water to represent each joy and sorrow. And like the stone in the pond, the ripples go out, and so we all share and give support to those in sorrow and celebrate the joys. We have some sorrows this week. Past 2 weeks have been a time of profound loss for our congregation. Last week we found out that long-term member and friend Frida Gray Davidson died March the 25th in a Tucson hospice. There will be a celebration of her life next Saturday, April the 22nd, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at 1326 West Highway 92, Suite 12 in Bisbee. And this is for freedom. And this week, after a short illness, Karen Horton died April 13th. One day before what would, for Karen, have been the 50th wedding anniversary with her late husband, Jim, who died 1 year, 6 months, and 5 weeks ago. Karen referred to his death in her last days before she lost the ability to respond. They had quite a life together, and if you know Jim, you would appreciate that. A service will be set for Karen at a later date. I have a sorrow. A very good friend of mine, Jerry Reagan, passed away about a week ago. He was a gentleman confined to a wheelchair as a result of some hip surgery that ended up in significant infection, sepsis in his body. Jerry was an Irishman, and yesterday we had a celebration of life to him, and we tipped a few little drums of Jameson. I'm going to end this with a joy. And this is a joy from Dave Emmett. While vacationing in Cozumel on New Year's Eve 2022, Dave got down on his knee and proposed to Senorita Alicia Abrego. She responded with a resounding and unequivocal "Sure." And they were married here in this church exactly 1 year ago. So this is their 1 year anniversary. As I mentioned today, you know, the first year is easy. To end up, she is my light, heart, and soul, and not a day goes by when I am thankful she said, "Sure." And I'll put some stones in the water for those joys and sorrows that have remained unsaid, but are in your minds, I'm sure. Now we'll hear from Jamili.
And from each other, too. So I have another story for you. Our children this year, in our organized programs, and long story, we can talk about Sky Island later, have been studying Superhero Academy has been our curriculum. And so we've been talking with the kids about how each of them, each of us, is unique, and each of us has the ability to go into the world and make change like superheroes. Can you think of any origin stories of superheroes, right? So in a superhero story, and we have lots of them, a superhero will go from a moment where they're an ordinary person. They're just humdrum, Bob, Joe, Jane. There's a moment where something changes for them and they become super. Can you think of any stories or any superheroes that come to mind? Spider-Man.
In our age group, Superman.
Superman, absolutely. Yes, and he becomes super. Well, and part of his origin story is coming to Earth, right? On his home planet, he's normal, but here he has all these powers. Can you think of any others?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Okay. I don't know his origin. You'll have to tell me later what his origin story is. I think we can even go back to like Greek mythology, Pandora's box, right? There's a moment where things are okay, and Pandora opens this jar, and things are different, right? This moment. And in that way, all of us have an origin story, and probably many of them over the course of our lives. It can be something big or little, something we expect or something we don't expect. It can be fast, or it can take many years and lots of time. It's just a moment where you became something different. So parenting, recovery, adulthood, elderhood, gaining or losing faith, these are all moments in our own stories where at one point we're something and we become something different. One of my origin stories took place in about 2001. I just finished graduate school for the first time and moved to a new city for work. I didn't know anyone. This was my second move in 3 years, and that meant that I was completely without community again. So I sought out a community that valued social justice, human rights, free thought. I ended up with the Exactly. That was the first time I walked into a Unitarian Universalist church, and I felt completely and utterly unwelcome. I knew for sure this was not the place for me. The congregation was standoffish. There were Jewish and Christian symbols on the walls that didn't represent me as a young, questioning Muslim woman. It was another place where I was not enough, not outgoing enough, not Christian enough, not something. But I tell you what, the sermons got me. I was electrified every single Sunday by the minister and the ideas he offered, by the promise of justice, the vision that they drew for the world, and I was in. I never said at that point, though, I'm a UU. In fact, I rarely told people where I went on Sunday mornings because as a young liberal person, people don't go to church, right? That's not where my people are. And yet I found myself going back. It took several more years of exploring and going to other organized faiths, becoming a mom, all these life changes before I really understood this faith. So my origin, this cataclysmic event that created my superpowers, or at least brought me to your pulpit today, happened around 2013, right? So a good, 12 years later, when I was teaching religious education to my 4-year-old at the UU church where I was living. At that point, as I learned more about UU theology and ideas, Unitarian Universalism claimed me fully. See, we were teaching spirit play, which was about the 7 principles, and teaching it to a 4-year-old in a way that a 4-year-old could understand. I finally got it, right? It took that teaching to them for me to say, I understand this is who I am. And it was at that moment that this faith captured my heart and my soul. Now, my bet is that most of us here have a UU origin story of some kind. Maybe you went from, I attend a UU church, to, or my parents were UU, a lot of us, to, I am UU. If you joined us older, or maybe from a different tradition, this was the moment when you said to yourself, oh, this is where I belong. These are my people. Or if you're new or visiting, the question is, what brought you here in the first place? That could be a part of your own origin story. So here's the discussion piece. I'm curious about your origin stories with your Unitarian Universalism. So in a minute, when I say go, not right now, I'm going to invite you to turn to a neighbor and share, what is your origin story? When you were telling your origin stories, how many told or heard a story that included somewhere in there the 7 principles? No? We just don't know. Oh, that's interesting. Well, do we know what the 7 principles are? See, here's I lean into teacher mode. Actually, no. This is you're jumping the. You're the A+ student. You're at the end of the story. Oh, right. Makes sense. Do we have any sense of what they are? Can we name any of them? I worked with one minister. She said, and this was years ago, she said the only one she knew off the top of her head was the first, inherent worth and dignity of all persons, because the acronym is IWOD, IWOD, inherent worth and dignity, IWAD, IWOD. That was the only one that she knew. Do we have any others? Even like a summary of them? Do we have a sense? Democratic process.
Continued search for,
Continued search for truth and meaning. Inclusiveness. Interconnectedness of all beings. Did I hear another one? Use of reason. What else is in there? Okay, so can we see I printed them for us. Handy of me. So this is how they read. Let me turn around. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. IWOD. You have that one memorized now. Yep. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So I think we named pieces and parts of each of those. Bonus for the 6 sources? No, I'm not going to ask you the 6 sources, right? This list is in our bylaws, and it concludes with this paragraph. I'm going to read you this paragraph. Quote, grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. So here's my question, and I'm going to ask this rhetorically now. We're going to come back to it in a little bit. What do these words tell us to do or to not do? What do these words tell us to do or not do? Let that simmer. Let's think about that for a bit. So an origin tells us about a moment of profound change for the hero. Unitarian Universalism is in an origin stories. We've had lots of origin stories over our denomination, right? The 1961 merger would be a huge one I think all of us would point to. And we know that these principles, as they stand, are already being discussed. The UU Church of Tucson, where I serve primarily, is one of about 241 congregations right now that have adopted the 8th principle. So we have 7 up here. Can anybody summarize the 8th?
I can read it. Fighting racism. Actively engage in anti-racism.
Ooh, very close, Tricia. Can we put it up? We've got that one too. There we go. Journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So this one gives us a little bit more direction on what we're supposed to do, what we're asked to do, what we're challenged to do, what we're encouraged to do, what we might do should we have a free moment, right? There's more doing language in here. So keep with that question. What do we do? And we know that the spider has been released. You all remember Spider-Man got bit by a spider, right? The spider has been released. The box has been opened. The event that will create our next origin story has begun. What do we know about how we got here? Our principles and bylaws are contained in one section of our association's, our principles are contained in one section of our bylaws. So this gets persnickety here. Okay, so this is called the Article 2, Principles and Purposes, obviously. Our lofty religious language is contained in our most mundane and bureaucratic governing documents, as it often is. Last week I was trying to explain Article 2 to somebody and these changes who wasn't a UU, and I said this is probably both the most controversial and the most boring debate possible because it's about bylaws. And for the most part, people in nonprofits, we don't care about our bylaws unless we want to do something or not do something that's in our bylaws. Annual meeting, right? In our bylaws, we have to do it. It's outlined in Article 15, called Amendments and Bylaws, way down at the bottom, 15.1.c.6. Right? So you're really reading the fine print in our bylaws. Starting online, get this, 1,729 of the bylaws. Not a simple document, not a short document, and it's bureaucracy, right? So it's all this stuff in there. At the very bottom, and I'm going to read this to you, it says, if no study process of Article 2 has occurred for a period of 15 years, the Board of Trustees shall appoint a commission to study Article 2. So in our bylaws, we're required to examine Article 2 every 15 years. When was the last time we examined Article 2?
15 years ago.
No. 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 I feel like I'm on Price is Right. Higher. No. It was, let's see. 1985. Somebody got the math on that?
35 years ago.
Right. So it's been a while. In January, our denomination president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, sent out an email outlining the history of these bylaws and when they were changed and how they were changed. And I want to read a little bit of what she wrote to us, because I think it helps us to elucidate this history so we can understand this fulcrum moment, right? This origin story that we're at right now and why. So she wrote, quote, "We are currently in a multi-year process to consider changes to our UUA principles and purposes. This process formally began in 2020 when the UUA board appointed an Article 2 study commission. So they officially in 2020 appointed a commission to look at our Article 2. This is a dry name for such important work. The reason is that our principles, purposes, covenant, and sources are contained in Article 2. Our 7 principles and 6 sources, which we know and love, were adopted in 1985. They offered a substantial change from what preceded them. The changes came through various years at various points, were offered in particular by UU women to make the language more inclusive. From the 1961 adoption to 1985, those were the biggest changes that were made. So, fun fact, in 1961 we only had 6 principles. The interdependent web, the 7th principle, wasn't even on the radar in 1961. So the work that they did in those intervening years removed the language of God and man and brotherhood and added language of interdependence, added more gender expansivity included women in a way that we hadn't been before. So there was a lot that happened in those years, and not a lot that's happened since. There was one attempt to have another principle added and another principle revised, and the latest one was 2017. That didn't get passed, which I think is an example of our democracy in action, right? We hold that we are going to vote and we are going to be a part of this process, and clearly that has worked for us. Currently, and what you have in your hot little hands, is the latest proposal and revision to Article 2. So that revision isn't final. There is still time to read it, to talk about it, to evaluate it, to feel how we feel about it. And I invite for us to enter in this time of discernment about Article 2 in the spirit that Reverend Susan invites us to. She writes, "We should enter our conversations with a spirit of curiosity, holding off attachments to outcomes, and listen with our whole hearts to the fullness and diversity of voices in our community. May the process itself deepen our understanding of and commitment to our faith." So listening to each other and listening to ourselves with our whole hearts and our open minds, we have to ask, what does the report from the Article 2 Study Commission say anyways? We're going to look at this paper and we're going to talk briefly, but before I say any of that, I want your full attention when I say, you can give me all of your feedback. You can give Reverend Tina, you can give Lex, you can give your neighbor all of your feedback. It won't actually make any change in this document. If you have a point to make that really needs to be heard, there's an email address that I'll show you at the end where you can email the commission directly and tell them your feedback. You could be a General Assembly delegate, and you can actually vote on whether we're moving forward with these changes or not. And probably the most interesting thing to do would be to talk to people, right? Get a group together here, have a conversation about what this document is and what it says. And I wish we had time today to get into the whole report, because as a person who read the bylaws, I find it fascinating what's in that report. And if that's you, go and read it. But this you have on your paper, and I want to put up here, this is our summary or our visual representation of what the report says. So around the inside of these little flower petals or wings, or what do they look like to you? These little colorful, say it again?
Flower petals.
Flower petals? Yeah. Pinwheel? Mm-hmm. And I've heard it described that this is intentionally a pinwheel to indicate that motion, like pinwheels spin, and its change, its motion, its fluidity, right? There's some expansiveness in that. So around the outside, I've written the words, love is the word at the center with our chalice. And then on the left-hand side, interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. Those are the words that if they're too small inside that circle, those are the words that are in that circle. As you read through the summary that I gave you later on, not right now, we can pull out of there our 7 principles. You could map onto that summary the 7 principles in there. The question is, what do we lose by this change? What do we gain from this change? And again, it's all potential. There's nothing concrete here. How do we stay in community as we grapple with this enormous origin story as it comes at us? Now, the commission knew that proposing this would cause big feelings. They wrote, and I quote from them, "Whenever there is change, there is loss. And where there is loss, there is grief. We honor the fact that there is a loss in changing what has become so familiar to us. We are also mindful that we need not lose everything. You may have noticed that many of the words and themes in our new principles, in our current principles, remain in the new Article 2, just in a new format." And I want to say explicitly and directly, it is okay to say how these changes make you feel. And they might make us feel all kinds of ways. I've had conversations with colleagues and professionals and lay people, and we all have a huge range of feelings about this proposal. And that's okay. And it's okay to say you don't feel anything. It's okay to say you don't know enough. It's okay to say, I don't get it, why are we doing this? And here we are, right? We're having this conversation on the national stage. This summer at our General Assembly, where all the congregations gather together, imagine this is going to be a really heated conversation. What do we do? It's a really hard decision, and we know that all superheroes have hard decisions to make. I know some of you will know Superman better than I do, but at one point in one of those stories, Superman had to decide, is he going to stay in love with Lois Lane and live his life with her and lose his powers, or is he going to keep his powers and not have love and continue to save the world? He had a tough choice to make. We have that kind of a tough choice. Who are we? Who do we want to be? What legacy are we leaving for the next 50 years? Or 12, 15 if we choose to evaluate our principles again in 12 years, 15 years. How we make it is up to us. And maybe we start by asking ourselves some really big questions. Where does my bliss, truth, happiness, meaning lie? Like Rabia in our story, who was looking for her needle in the wrong places, are we looking to the wrong places to tell us who we are and what we believe? Maybe our values and our actions don't come from the outside. Maybe they don't come from our bylaws. And I think we've got to ask, what ultimately are we loyal to? Are we loyal to the words on the page or to the spirit behind them? Are we loyal to the values we have in common, or the specific way our earlier selves, much earlier selves, articulated them? Are we loyal to acceptance of one another, encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations? Growth means change. Growth means that we will be uncomfortable. Growth is new. Can we and will we allow our denomination to also experience spiritual growth? And are we loyal to each other? How can we do this hard thing together? Sometimes when things are hard, they can become divisive. And that's what I worry about at GA. We know that we must grow, change, and adapt, or we will perish. We know we have to do that. Octavia Butler teaches us, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And if we're thinking about going and changing the world and making it the place we want to live in, how do we articulate our values together so they give us some direction on how to take that action? I don't know, but I think we can figure it out together. Thank you. The purpose of community is to help people
Please
grow.
sit.
Please sit. Frequently and with ardor. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us had changed since the day we came here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown in ourselves and one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard it might be, because those encounters have many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from here this morning, not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all. And before we extinguish our chalice this morning, I want to invite you to come back and talk some more about, I'm not an expert, but I've read the commission's report, and I'd love to have more conversation about the Article 2 Study Commission or any topic.
And also, before we extinguish our chalice, I have a couple of things that I missed previously. One was the announcement that the Free Thinkers will be meeting in the community room today at 1 o'clock. The second thing I neglected to do was it relates to Karen Horton. Wendy LaRocca, Karen's sister, sent this to Tina and asked that we read it in worship today. And it's kind of thought-provoking. At birth, we board a train and we meet our parents, and we believe that they will always travel by our side. As time goes by, other people will board the train, and they will be significant. Example, our siblings, friends, children, and even the love or loves of our life. However, at some station, our parents will step down from the train, leaving us on this journey alone. Others will step down over time and leave a permanent vacuum. Some, however, go so unnoticed that we don't realize they vacated their seats. The train ride will be full of joy, sorrow, fantasy, expectations, hellos, goodbyes, and farewells. Success consists of having a good relationship with all passengers, requiring that we give the best of ourselves. The mystery to everyone is, we do not know at which station we ourselves will step down. So we must live in the best way, love, forgive, and offer the best of who we are. It is important to do this, because when the time comes for us to step down and leave our seat empty, we should leave behind beautiful memories for those who will continue to travel on the train of life. I wish you all a joyful journey.
I feel like that could be our chalice extinguishing.
The reading, as we extinguish the chalice today, is I Put My Faith in You by Anya Samlar Michael. I put my faith in you. I put my faith in every one of you who woke up this morning with the weight of loss, manifesting as numbness, anger, fear, or an alienating, aching pain. I put my faith in you, and I pray you will put your faith in me. We need one another now, because we will not make it alone. Thank you. Please stay seated here as we listen to the postlude by Richard. It's a little postlude by J.S. Bach. Thank you, Richard. Go in peace, safety, and happiness.
Go team.
Well, thank you.